Good morning, everybody. My Friday update. So, what I'm going to cover today, three areas. First of all, some good news, because I think it's really important to start with some good news in the current climate. The second thing is what's worrying CEOs the most at the moment. I've spoken to quite a few agency CEOs this week and comms directors. What's front of their mind? And then talk a bit about F1 outreach at the end. First of all, some good news. The first thing is I've heard a lot about freelance bookings being stopped. It's not our experience. We've had a number of our freelance and short-term contract bookings pushed out over the next 2 to 3 months, possibly on 3 days a week rather than 5, but we certainly haven't had any freelance bookings cancelled. Second bit of good news is all the people that started permanent jobs through us between January and March this year, not one of them has been furloughed, not one of them has been let go. They're all on probationary periods, so it would have been very easy for them to have been let go, and actually none of them have, which is good news. Our rapid response team continues to grow. We've got over 150 practitioners signed up. We had our first bookings through from one of the NHS trusts yesterday evening, which is great news. And I'm sure there'll be more bookings coming through. So I think there's a lot of anxiety at the moment around the recruitment market completely dropping out. And I think the world just needs to get used to the new reality a bit. Companies are very anxious at the moment. They're furloughing a lot of staff. Some of them are having, sadly, to make redundancies. And of course, recruitment has to go on hold. You can't be sending out mixed messages to the wider community that you're hiring when you're actually making people redundant and furloughing people. So the freelance market will be the first market to come back without a doubt. And I think everyone just needs to just hold tight a bit over the next few weeks, and hopefully after Easter, once organisations have looked at the resources that they've got and they've made the furloughing that they need to make, that things will start to improve a little bit around new contracts coming onto the market. So I think what's worrying CEOs, I've had some really interesting conversations this week, and in past recessions, we all know that companies cut their marketing budgets first, they cut their people first, which is completely counterintuitive. We all know that in the marketing sector. We all know how difficult it is to find talent in the best of markets, and we don't want to lose that talent. So I think CEOs are most anxious about letting people go and furloughing people. They are anxious about how to manage those people that they have furloughed. How do you manage a group of people that aren't allowed to work? It's difficult to even keep in contact with them when they're furloughed. And how do you then keep in contact and motivate the staff that are still that haven't been furloughed, that are still working? Some organisations I'm speaking to are furloughing people for 3 weeks and then bringing them back in. And I think this, for the younger group, sort of under 35s, is a really interesting idea to 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, and then nobody's feels that they're being singled out, and it's on a rotation basis. I mean, employee engagement is the most important thing that's keeping CEOs awake at the moment. They don't want to lose staff, and they want to keep those staff motivated. A lot of CEOs haven't worked remotely, and I think it's really interesting talking to them. Most are now completely sold on the idea that flexible and remote working is really here to stay, which is great news for returners. It's great news for anybody that can't work 5 days a week in an office, because I think that group that have possibly been a bit resistant to having a flexible, more agile workforce is now very sold on the fact that productivity can still stay and remain high. There are loads of challenges with a remote workforce. We all know that. And I think CEOs are struggling as much as anybody else with how to keep communicating with everybody during the lockdown period. But I think they're going to be flexible and agile working converts when it comes to re-recruiting after this COVID-19 crisis. So organisations have got lots of different sort of hubs going on around mental health and physical well-being. But I was very, very heartened that the whole employee engagement is absolutely, top of their minds at the moment. I think values of organisations. I talked a bit about corporate citizenship last last week. And I know that in America, they have actually created something called the COVID-19 Corporate Response Tracker. And I'm absolutely sure there'll be something like that set up in the UK very soon that will track the way that corporates are actually reacting to this crisis on all sorts of levels. So, yeah, corporate responsibility, leading from the front. You've heard already of CEOs taking pay cuts, of boards not taking dividends, of shareholders also not taking dividends. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And I think that more and more leadership teams will share the pain with their employees. And that's a really, really important thing to be able to do. So moving on to F1 outreach, we've been really brainstorming internally about how to keep our clients and people that we don't work with, how we keep their employer brand front of mind when they're not really recruiting at the moment, and you can't be seen to be recruiting if you're making people redundant. So we're going to be launching F1 Outreach probably at the beginning of May, and this will give our clients an opportunity to really keep in contact with the talent community. So more of that a bit later, but look out for F1 Outreach. Have a good weekend. It's going to be 20 degrees in London, 19 degrees outside. So hopefully we'll all get a bit of sunshine, and I'll catch up with you all next week. Thanks. Bye.